Hello and welcome back to any returning listeners to the podcast. Thank you for listening. If this is your first time listening, my name is Hardy El Pinto. Back in 2018, I started my own small business where I distribute movie serials, feature films, and TV shows, all with roots in Pulp Fiction. And this is my podcast, One on One, where I take people I admire on social media and force them to be my friend for a half an hour. Today, I have a triple, quadruple, however many threats you want to call it. She's a writer, director, performer, singer, all kinds of things involved in local community theater and whatnot. Today, I'm talking to Jeannette.
Hi,
How you doing today?
I'm doing great.
All right, so I'm really excited to have you on the podcast. Thank you very much because you're wonderfully supportive on Twitter. If people don't know
Oh,
you, hopefully they do. Hopefully they follow you back. I know you definitely follow a lot of film people on there,
I
and like
do.
there are definitely times even when like I'll tweet something out and then like nobody will notice and I thought, "Oh, that was a good tweet. I like that." But then like I get a notification that you like liked and retweeted it and
Yeah.
that definitely makes my day. That makes me happy. That at least one person liked it. That made me happy.
Aw, there's some really great people on Twitter, and they're just so smart about movies and cinema, and so I'm excited to be part of the conversation.
Right, definitely. Yeah, I mean, because it's definitely a film Twitter, especially, is definitely a wonderful place to. I mean, it can be sometimes it's terrible, but
Yeah.
it
Yes.
it can be a wonderful place to talk to people about movies. I mean, I've seen people post about this before about how there's no one really in their friend group or family that they can really talk to openly about movies about because just that's
Mhm.
just not what interests the people directly in their lives, and I fully understand that. So it is very nice when you can connect with people on film Twitter and realize, oh no, I'm not the only one. There are other people that like this weird, indie 80s
Mhm.
movie that I also like that I didn't think anybody else had seen. And
Mhm.
it's just really nice to be able to make a connection like that.
Well, and there's so many different perspectives. So if you don't have that demographic in your circle, you wouldn't get that perspective from someone. So having being able to talk to people all over the world in film Twitter, you're just able to learn so much more about a film because you can see it from their perspective at the same time. So it's pretty fun, exciting.
Exactly. And like I said, obviously, yes, it does have its downsides. There are at least a couple, really bad takes every single week that people get obsessive about, and
Oh yeah.
everyone, quote tweets. I don't know. I don't know why we let ourselves do that, but yes, everyone, of course, gets upset about the same tweet
Mm-hmm.
all in one day, and it makes a very interesting afternoon for everyone. But
Definitely.
yeah, but like I said in the intro, you're not just into cinema, obviously. Like you have on your bio on Twitter, you are also into community theater and whatnot. Do you want me tell me a little bit about that?
Sure. So I have been in community theater for years and years and years. I write a lot of short plays, mostly comedy, but I also direct and mostly comedy. And I perform in community theater. I perform as a singer in musicals, but also just a solo performer. Community theater is vital to existence, I would say. Um, I don't know. There's so much. There's so much in that little umbrella of a word. Is there anything in particular you're interested in about?
What necessarily got you interested in community theater?
Well, this last go round, these last few years, I guess 5, 6 years, I was in a really bad relationship. Didn't have um, much of my what I could call my own at the time, and I took a chance. This show Les Mis was being done at my local community theater. And I had been kind of hesitating to get myself out there because it had been a number of years. And so I just thought, what the heck, I'll go do it. I never get to sing show tunes anyway. I was a singer in a cover band for a number of years, and so I was always doing pop and rock and country and all that kind of stuff, but I didn't really get a chance to do any show tunes. And so I auditioned for Les Mis, and surrounded by a ton of super, super talented people who were way more talented than I was, I thought. And I got in. I got cast. So, and then it's just been gung-ho ever since. Once I closed that show, it inspired me to get out of that relationship, start writing again, and start producing and acting and directing. And so I've been doing that for, I guess, the last 5 years.
All right, yeah, that's really cool. I think it's really awesome that you took something that you're passionate about, and it also positively affect your life as well.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, the funny thing is, like, I think because obviously a lot of people on Twitter, a lot of people I'm friends with, we create things for the web, but creating things for the web and doing something in front of a live audience are obviously two entirely different things.
Mm-hmm.
That's the funny thing. Like like 500 people can see something that you put up on Twitter or YouTube or something, but it's not really the same feeling as being in a room as, like, I don't know, like 50 audience members and then them seeing you do something. Even though it's less people, it can be kind of more of an exhilarating
Mm-hmm.
feeling. Obviously, I've never necessarily been involved in community theater before, but I did 4 years of drama in high school.
Oh.
And yeah, I mean, and not that I was ever actually good, but I love to write, and that was a way of me being able to get my writing out there. That was the easiest
Mm-hmm.
way in my head at the time. And yeah, it's kind of crazy and kind of hard to explain. Even though, again, I was in high school, so it was just yeah, it was like an audience of like 50 people, and sure, they were like parents and teachers, but at the same time, it's kind of crazy to think about how, yeah, when you're up in front of people, it's just such a completely different feeling than
Mm-hmm.
taking time to make your something by yourself quietly, and then posting it on the internet rather than seeing the end result live in front of people.
Well, both I think are nerve-wracking, because you're, like you said, I mean, you are putting yourself out there, whether you have a live audience or whether you put it out on the web, and then you have to sit back and wait for the comments, if any, to start rolling in. They're both exciting and they're both nerve-wracking because it's such a subjective audience. One person will love you and think you're brilliant for the very same reasons another person thinks you should do something else with your life. It's just crazy.
Exactly, and I mean, obviously, that it's kind of a double-edged sword when it comes to being creative in general. Because yeah, like
Mm-hmm.
you said, what obviously you want is people to be able to encourage you and tell you you're doing a good job, but at the same time, yeah, it can be really rough to take criticisms, especially online, when people feel like they can kind of say anything because everyone is a little faceless, because we
Mm-hmm.
are all behind computers, and we do tend to forget that we are talking to another person on the other end of it.
So, one of the things that I do too is I write a blog that reviews community theater. And since I know most of the people involved in the community theater area where I live, it can be very, very tricky because while I am considered um, and respected amongst my group, it's still very it's still very tricky to see something that it doesn't quite work and then put it in a way so that when your review comes out of that show or where you're talking about that actor or just anything technical, putting it in there in a constructive way so the person appreciates the review but learns something that they can get better in the next time. You know, they can learn something and just grow as a performer or as a tech person or director or something like that. So that's been a very interesting balancing act I've been doing, um, taking my theater one step further and reviewing it.
Exactly, because definitely, while constructive criticism is very vital, it's never easy necessarily giving it or receiving it, especially if you do know the person prior.
Mm-hmm.
I know when, like I said, when I was in high school, I was writing a lot more than I am now, unless you count Twitter as writing, but I kind of don't. I really don't. But like I was trying to, I'm more focusing on nonfiction now because I've learned
Mm-hmm.
that that's my strength. But in high school, I was trying to write a lot of fiction. I was trying to write a lot of short stories,
Mm-hmm.
and like I do like a draft or two, and then I hand it off to somebody else, and they tell me like I need to work on it more. But obviously, I was a teenager, so I would kind of get upset about that because I felt like, well, I spent so long, hours working on this, like why is it
Mm-hmm.
not good enough now? And it's funny because it takes age and experience to realize no, drafts are writing. They are a huge part of writing, and that's something you have to learn about and realize. No, you constantly do have to work on it and get better because you really never stop learning.
Yeah, that's true. I get really lucky um, when I get my inspiration can come from anywhere, and I've been really lucky where just a few, maybe one or two drafts, and then I just leave it, and it's good on its own. I don't like to overthink it. I don't like to over edit. I don't like to mess with it too much.
Yeah, no, I get that. Like, so, again, sometimes that works. Obviously, like I said, I wasn't as strong of a writer back then as I am now.
Yeah.
Definitely, when I write an article for like Filmotomy or their league or something like that, one of the websites run, by friends, I'll like, oh, every once in a while I'll write for you. I do a couple drafts, but I feel definitely more confident in what I'm doing now than I did then, especially now that I've really come to terms with, that's my strength. That's what I'm
Mm-hmm.
okay with writing about. Like I can write about a film. I don't think I can necessarily write a film because I definitely have tried and failed.
Well, you tried. That's good.
Exactly, because definitely the screenwriting and trying to write books and writing articles are three entirely different things.
Oh, yeah. I mean, completely different things. Writing a short story, writing a screenplay, writing a play. It is completely different. My last short play that we read last night at my playwriting group was um, inspired by a short play. I'm sorry, a short story that I wrote for a short story writing challenge out of New York. And I do it because I do those types of competitions because it's not my normal way of writing, but it forces you to just think differently, um, and just gets you out of your usual comfort zone. And they give you a genre assignment and a character and a circumstance, and then you have to create a story. It's not just something you have to think up necessarily organically on your own. And so it's always good to stretch things out.
Yeah, exactly, definitely. Because I feel like again when you're first getting started and when you're younger, you don't really think about that about how uh your brain you do have to exercise it like you would
Mm-hmm.
anything else. And
Yeah.
so it is very good to challenge yourself when you're trying to be a creative person, and it's good to try to do something a little bit different than you normally would, or try to put a constraint on yourself
Mm-hmm.
that you wouldn't necessarily have to deal with. But again, it's good to have to do that because it forces yourself to be more creative than you normally would.
Well, so I imagine, being a film reviewer, when you and you enjoy the pulp movies primarily, but when people ask you to explain a movie that maybe not doesn't quite fit in that criteria, it's a stretch for you, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
Definitely.
so
Oh, sorry.
it's the same. It's kind of the same, just getting out of your comfort zone and the themes and what you normally write about. It just kind of stretches your perspective and your skills.
Exactly. Like, what was it? I think it was the halfway point through the year. Yeah, for Film Automy, they had, I think, 25 different writers, including myself. And we all had to kind of pick one movie that we really loved and wanted to talk about throughout the year. I think it was like there was three different sets of articles. There was like a movie moment, a character, and a movie. And I chose just to talk about a movie.
Mm-hmm.
But I think one of the criteria, if I remember correctly, was it had to be 300 words or less. And so I had to
Oh,
fit within that and do a full kind of like mini review explaining like why what I picked and why you should watch it within like a 300 word limit.
oh
And
my gosh.
yeah, so I remember being up I think like at 11:30 at night just trying to squeeze it all in, everything I wanted to say about that movie and to really, hopefully convince somebody reading to check it out because it was definitely a film that not a lot of people went to go see.
Oh, do you remember what it was?
Yeah, The Sun is also a star, which I mean, obviously, I liked a lot more than other people. I know. I think on the tomato meter is probably like 40 or 50%, and
Mm.
a lot of people would kind of look at that movie and kind of roll their eyes at it because it's a teen romance film, which it is. I mean, there are definitely moments in that movie that are really sappy. That I even kind of rolled my eyes at, but at the same time, I think it's a really great film about race because a lot of the
Oh,
most, if not all, the characters in the movie are people of color. I think
mm.
there's only one speaking role from a white character, and it's based on a book. Yeah, it was written by, if I remember correctly, an Asian female writer, and then an African American female writer wrote the screenplay, and then a woman directed the film.
Wow.
And yeah, no, it's really good. Again, I understand why people wouldn't love it because, like I said, it is a sappy teen romance. But the two characters, one is an immigrant from Jamaica, and the other one is a first generation um, child of immigrants from Korea,
Mm-hmm.
and their race definitely comes into play, and it does kind of talk about the origins of their parents and how that affects their lives, and how being first generation American and being an immigrant are both have pressure, but
Mm-hmm.
those are two different pressures, which I can fully understand because I am first generation American. Both my parents were immigrants from two different places, and I think that movie just talks about race and talks about immigration in a such a smart way, and
Mm-hmm.
it's just so visually interesting that even though it does have faults when it comes again to the romance stuff, which is like I said is kind of sappy because it's a teen romance.
Sure.
I think on other levels, I think it works really well and addresses things that not a lot of films nowadays are.
Cool. Yeah, I would say that would be hard to get all that into 300 words or less.
Exactly, because I don't even think I really talked about the plot much. I think I just talked about the race stuff, if I'm correct. But like I said, I think it's really important, especially if someone can come across that review and look at it and go, "Oh, okay, I didn't know. This could be representative of me. Maybe I should check it out." So that's definitely that was the hope in that.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. Okay, but enough talking about me. I would talk way too much on this podcast. I know my guests always tell me that I don't. That is fine, but the whole point is, of course, the guest. Yet I somehow end up talking more than I should.
All right.
So,
I'm an open book. Ask me anything you want.
okay. So you said you also write about movies. Do you
Mhm.
remember? Is there like this is a kind of a question I like to try to ask my guests when I can, because I think this is a good question. Is there like a specific year or film or set of films that really kind of sparked your interest in film?
Oh gosh. I That's a hard question. I don't think so. I think I've just been watching. for as long as I can possibly remember, and I love so many different kinds of movies. Um, I, in my late 20s, early 30s, I lived near Los Angeles and did voiceover work and was an extra and was a production assistant and, just kind of trying to absorb as much as I possibly could in that field. And had a lot of really cool opportunities just to be on sets and have the veil lifted a little bit, seeing how things were actually um, done and created, and the people that were involved. And I worked with this producer for about a year, and he would have me. This Italian guy from New York who was plopped into Granada Hills, if you know where that is, in the valley, and he would crunch on these hard Bavarian pretzels while he talked with his mouth full, with his mouth open, and we would talk about films. And I would watch movies. My homework was always, if I wasn't working on a set or something on a Saturday, I was always just watching as many films as I could and then reporting back what worked, what didn't work, who he should keep an eye out for, who was the hot actor, just things. And then when we would be together, people would send him like small treatment screenings and stuff. And we would watch these and talk about movies and, some really lame stuff like surfing vampires and just, silly things. And it just is so fascinating. Film is such a window into living because it gives you a perspective from anywhere. Love is, you can never tell all the stories you could possibly tell about love or loss or dying or being born. I mean, there's just so many stories out there. Even if it's I've seen this movie before, you haven't really seen it before. And even bad movies are great because you learn what not to do, what not to write or what not to, that scene didn't work, it's just an amazing opportunity to be able to see film from all over the world, what's important. So I don't even know if I answered your question.
Oh no, that was really wonderful. I really like that answer a lot. That was a great answer. I did not expect pretzels being brought up at some point. That was a twist on the story. That was wonderful. I don't know. That was just really good. Because yeah,
Yeah.
mine is definitely way less interesting. Back in 2009, I just had like I had always liked movies. Obviously, every kid likes movies because why not watch something that your parents rented from the video store than do homework? Like, that's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
But it wasn't really until 2009 that I started kind of viewing them differently. I don't, because I don't like the word cinephile. I don't like the word film buff. Like, I don't know. Those terms kind of bug me. So I guess the only way I could really describe it is movie person. That's the only way I can really think. Because obviously, everyone isn't a critic, so I don't like to say necessarily with a critical eye, but when you start watching movies as a movie person, obviously it's really different than how the general public watches it, because the general public really just has a story being told to them. But when you watch something as a movie person, you kind of break it apart in your head and you kind of realize, what is going on really and how it's being told and all the pieces, kind of like that the film Begin Again with Mark Ruffalo when oh god, what's her name? I cannot remember the actress' name right now. I feel really bad. The girl from Pirates of the Caribbean. Anyway, when she's up on stage. Thank you, Keira Knightley. In that movie, he's getting drunk at a bar because he just lost his job. and Keira Knightley is up on stage and she's singing and she's playing the guitar. She's performing a song at
Mm-hmm.
her friend's little open mic night. And while he's listening to her performance, he's kind of breaking it down in his head of like the different elements of the song. But
Oh.
at the same time, he's not just breaking it down, he's adding things. Like you can see, like, you see like different instruments kind of come into life on the stage
Mm.
without anyone actually playing them. They're just kind of like playing themselves, almost like a cartoon. And like you hear the drums coming in, and you see like the drumsticks moving, and you hear the bass coming in. So he's kind of breaking it down in his head and not just seeing what it is, but what it could be. And I feel like that's kind of the best way I can explain to non-movie people how movie people watch movies.
Mm-hmm.
Is like you're not just absorbing the story, you're viewing it as it is and all the parts that make it up. But at the same time, especially when a movie doesn't fully work, you kind of not only see it for what it is, but what it could be.
Mm-hmm.
And sorry, I know I'm going off on a huge tangent. I'm sorry.
No, that's perfect. That's exactly how I watch movies. It's exactly how I watch theater. It's exactly, yeah, that's perfect.
Okay, and anyhow, okay, to get back to the actual thing I was talking about, in 2009, before my dad passed away, we had been watching more movies together, and there were definitely several movies that really kind of made me think about movies in a different way and kind of launched me on this path. Was it that year we watched Planet Terror? We watched No Country for Old Men. We
Oh.
watched There Will Be Blood. And
Mm-hmm.
then after he passed on, I had watched Tarantino for the first time because I was told I was too young to watch Tarantino's movies. So
Yeah.
I had seen Kill Bill Volume 1 and 2. I think it was like Spike TV or some channel, some cable channel was showing both of
Mm-hmm.
them back to back. And so with all those kind of movies, the fact that I had consumed all of those in 1 year, it kind of really cemented my love for film. And
Mm-hmm.
it didn't hurt that I also had started watching at the movies right before it got canceled by CBS. And then I was
Mm-hmm.
watching Leonard Maltin's show on Reel's channel, I think in 2010, because that show had just started.
Mm-hmm.
And so that just kind of changed the way I looked at movies.
Yeah, I think I think watching foreign films for me had a similar experience because I don't even remember how I started watching foreign films, but it's been so long ago. But I just remember feeling like, what? They their stories are so, they don't leave anything to your imagination. Um, I mean, they do, but the way that they shoot the story can be so graphic, but at the same time is exactly what it would be if that was happening in real life. Whereas a lot of American films, we have this, gauzy veil. We think we're being graphic, but we're not really as authentic, I think, as some foreign films are able to be. Um, I don't know if you feel the same way, and I'm not even sure I'm explaining it correctly, but um, especially like Japanese horror is, I don't think we can do anything in America that comes close.
No, I fully understand what you're saying. If I remember correctly, even one of my favorite filmmakers, Pedro Almodovar, like he gets asked all the time, when are you going to make an English language movie? When are you going to make a movie in Hollywood? Because he's been, making movies in Spain for the last, 40 years now.
Yeah,
And he always kind of responds like, well, why would I want to make a movie in America? They're going to have so many more limitations on what I can do.
right.
Why shouldn't I stay in Spain and have more of that freedom?
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I fully agree with that. And yeah, like you say about Japanese horror, I was listening to Critically Acclaimed recently, and they were reviewing the new. It was the Grudge? Yeah, that was the new one that came out this January,
Mm-hmm.
and they were talking about how in America there's a certain beat to jump scares and how you scare people in American movies. It's always like 1, 2, 3 scare, 1, 2, 3 scare.
Mhm.
But with something like The Grudge and The Ring, they were talking about how every single scare is on its own tempo. Like it could be like 1, 2 scare, 1, 2, 3 scare, one, two,
Mhm.
three, four, five scare, because they don't really need to adhere to any sort of formula necessarily with those movies. They can take their time, they can jump scare you, they don't even have to jump scare you, they could do something like slower and
Yes.
creepier, if you can
Yes.
argue. Like I said, with like The Grudge or The Ring, where they have the creepy child walking towards you, like it's not jumping out of the camera, he's
Mhm.
just slowly walking towards you, and in a way that is 10 times scarier than someone just jumping at you.
Yeah, and I think the way that they tell the story with the relationships is so subtle that you don't you're almost empathetic with the wrong people. It's not as clearly defined. I would say that with Parasite. I know Parasite's not really a horror film, but it's the relationships are so subtle in that film that when I've been reading people talk about it, it's amazing to me the different perspectives, and or even the American Joker. Just there's Joker felt like, okay, now we're going to do this, and then we're going to have the character to this, and it's all very structured and purposeful and deliberate. And Parasite just kind of sneaks up on you. I know there's structure and I know there's a deliberateness to it, but the overall tone was like it just kind of snuck up on you, where and not so much in your face.
Exactly. I definitely agree with that, because you can tell when you are watching a film by a great filmmaker, because they don't let you kind of see their guiding hand behind
Mm-hmm.
everything. Yeah, I definitely agree with that with Joker. I definitely, the biggest problem I have with that movie is the structure, because it doesn't know how to structure that type of movie. Because
Mm-hmm.
I really do like that type of movie in a weird kind of sick way of like the I'm slowly losing my mind
Oh
over
yeah,
time gradually type of movie. I mean,
yeah.
obviously there was a better version of that this decade. Well, two actually in the same year. Christine, starring Rebecca Hall, which was phenomenal, based on
Mm-hmm.
real life Christine Chubbuck, and Jackie, starring Natalie Portman, about Jackie Kennedy after the Kennedy assassination.
Mm-hmm.
Because that really is one of those types of movies, because she is absolutely losing her mind over time, because everything is kind of closing in on her,
Mm-hmm.
and the press and everything wants to talk to her after the Kennedy assassination. What Joker didn't necessarily understand is that it needs to be a gradual build. I feel like things just kind of happened in that movie,
Yeah.
and not everything was necessarily connected, and
Mm-hmm.
nothing really necessarily felt like a build. Unlike, like you said, Parasite, it feels very organic, it feels very natural, because you don't know exactly where the story is going.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, the first 45 minutes of Parasite kind of reminds me of Gold Diggers of 1933. I've brought that up a couple times. I think I even brought that up on last week's podcast, because they are kind of similar in
Yeah.
structure. But then again, Parasite in the second half completely twists off in an entire different thing that you would absolutely never see coming. And you could say that even changes genres over
Yeah.
the course of that film, three, four, five,
Yeah.
however many times. Um, but yeah, I fully understand that. I think it's definitely the studio system, especially where they are afraid that they're going to lose the audience if they are too subtle, and they definitely want a filmmaker to have a guiding hand in it. I think definitely another movie from this award season, as much as I really like this movie, I really do. I really like Little Women. I really like Greta Gerwig, but at the same time, as I was watching in the theater, you can kind of feel her guiding hand
Mm-hmm.
throughout the movie, especially in the performances, which I like. I'm not as crazy about the performances as everyone else. I don't think they're bad at all by any means, because everyone in this movie is a good experienced performer, but
Mm-hmm.
at the same time, much like Wes Anderson movies, that's what I've compared it to the
Yeah.
most, is that like every line of dialogue in Little Women kind of feels like, okay, you have to say it in this very specific way because this is how I'm telling you to say it, and you have to say it in this specific time. It doesn't always necessarily feel like a natural conversation between three people in a room in Little Women. It feels like, okay, I'm waiting to say my line exactly on this cue, exactly the way Greta wanted me to say it because I have to say it that exact way. Again, very much in that Wes Anderson kind of way. And again, as much as I really enjoyed the film, I didn't love that directing decision. I don't think
Mm.
it's a fault of the movie. I think it's a creative decision. I just don't necessarily agree with.
I have not seen Little Women. I wasn't planning on seeing Little Women. I feel like it's 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 probably perfectly fine. I may, rent it when it comes out or on video or something like that. But I can't. I don't. I just seeing the trailer, and it didn't seem like anything fresh and new. It's the same story that we read in a book, and we've seen on stage, and we've seen other versions of it. And I would agree with you. I think all the actresses are would be perfectly fun to watch, and I mean it'd be a perfectly fine movie. But would I would I say, man, this was the greatest movie I've ever seen? Probably not. Even just not even seeing it, because it's it's just been done so many times. And I shouldn't even say stuff like that, because I should give it a chance. But that's just my thought going in. It's just like, okay, I'll watch it if I have to, but and maybe it'll be good. But I don't really have my hopes up about it.
And I fully understand that. I wasn't super looking forward to it. My sister was very excited about it because she had read Little Women when she was younger and she was more familiar with the material than I was. I've never read Little Women. I've never seen a film adaptation of it. So
Mm-hmm.
then when we went to go see this one together, we
It's
surprisingly
fresh.
both enjoyed it,
Yeah.
because I would, I mean, I'm not saying to rush out to the theater because if you don't have interest, that's fine. I would definitely would suggest renting it when it does come out on
Yeah.
DVD,
Yeah.
because even though it is a story that has been told, the way she tells it is really phenomenal. Basically, without saying too much about it, she kind of takes like the Christopher Nolan or Quentin Tarantino route in telling this story. The story is basically told completely out of order, and you jump in time back and forth, which I thought was really fantastic.
Okay.
Even though again I've never experienced the story, I was never confused, I was never lost, and it gives the story a really energetic pace that you don't even realize you've been sitting there for 2 hours. It really doesn't even feel like that,
Mm-hmm.
because it just kind of keeps moving, because she never lets you kind of relax in it. It's always, okay, this is the next thing that happens, the next thing that happens, the next thing that happens, because she can jump to the present time and through the past to kind of give you the highlights of what's going on. And it gives, like I said, the movie the energy it needs. It makes it feel fresh and new, even though obviously it's a story that takes place in the 1800s. Yet she just gives it something that it really needed.
Cool. Well, I think that sounds pretty cool. It gives me a different reason to go and see it.
Definitely, like I said, I mean, even if you don't love everything about it, I think you'll appreciate how she, structures it and how she really tried to look at it from a different view. Because I don't know, I'm just kind of surprised because obviously, doing a film out of order is nothing new at all by
Mhm.
any means whatsoever. But I'm just kind of surprised that people don't attack classic literature in this kind of way
Oh,
of doing it from like a different point of view or a different structure like she has chosen to.
mm-hmm.
And so, I just kind of surprised, like I said, because a lot of these books have been around for a couple hundred years, that no one's really thought of doing this specific material in this way.
Well, maybe it'll inspire. You don't know. Maybe people have seen it now and they're off working on their screenplays right now.
Exactly. That's the hope. That's the hope, honestly. Even if a movie isn't perfect or for everyone, I mean, definitely the hope is to inspire, a new generation of creative people. Why not?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so I think this is a perfect place to end it. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you
I
for having me.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. I really enjoyed talking with you, even though again I probably talked too much. But
No, you did.
okay, well, thank you. So thank you everybody for listening. I really appreciate it. And this is the part of the show where we say goodbye. So goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye.